You're listening to the Financial Source podcast on YouTube.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Source podcast. We're doing something a little different in this deep dive. We're in episode 3 of about a 100-part series designed to walk through macro fundamentals from the ground up. So if you're new to the world of economics, trading, or policy, this foundational series is built specifically for you. This particular deep dive is called The Raw Basics of Fundamentals.
And we're really tackling a big barrier, I think, for a lot of newcomers to trading. It's this idea that fundamental analysis is, super complicated, full of jargon.
Yeah, like it's only for elite economists or something with secret data nobody else sees.
Exactly. But that couldn't be further from the truth.
The reality is you already have the core skill. You use fundamental analysis all the time, probably without even realizing it. And look, in today's market, so much information, prices flashing everywhere, understanding fundamental value. That's really the only way to get your bearings, avoid feeling overwhelmed, and figure out if an asset is actually worth the price tag.
Yeah, so our mission today is pretty straightforward. We want to strip away the acronyms, show you the simple core question behind all fundamentals. We'll explore how that logic applies to different things, like currencies, commodities, bonds, and give you a really powerful analogy to keep your focus sharp.
Okay, let's unpack this.
So when people first come to the market, right, they often hear fundamentals and immediately think, oh boy, central banks, the Fed, economic calendars, all these acronyms.
Yeah, it sounds intimidating, like this huge wall you have to climb.
It really does. And I think that initial feeling makes a lot of new traders just, retreat. They say, I'll just stick to the charts. That looks easier.
But the charts only show price, right?
Yeah.
The history of price. They don't tell you anything about the underlying value.
Precisely. And if we just push aside all those reports and policy statements for a second, fundamental analysis is actually the most intuitive skill we have. Because it really just boils down to one basic question. What is this thing really worth?
Okay, so the job then for someone doing fundamental analysis is just assess the asset's intrinsic value and then compare that to the price the market's showing right now.
That's it. If the value you assess is higher than the price, well, you might have found a bargain.
And if the price is way above the value you calculated, then it looks overvalued.
Exactly. It sounds simple, and the core idea is simple. But here's the challenge, and this is what makes it analysis rather than just, a casual glance. Assessing that intrinsic value, it needs structure. The price you see on the screen is reflecting tons of different people acting on different time frames, different emotions, sometimes not much real info at all.
Okay, so that brings up a really important point, especially for someone learning. Let's say my analysis tells me, hey, this asset is undervalued, but the price just stays high or even goes higher for weeks, months. How do I deal with that? It can feel like the analysis was wrong or, pointless.
Right, and that gap, that's market friction, or maybe just market fiction. Irrationality in the short term. Price is jumpy, it's reactive. Value, true fundamental value, is more structural, it moves slower. Our job with fundamentals isn't really to predict tomorrow's price. It's to figure out what the price should be, based on its real economic contribution or utility, maybe months or quarters down the line.
Okay, so it's a longer-term perspective.
Very much so.
Right.
The market might be, let's say, wrong for a while, but it tends to eventually swing back towards that fundamental value. Our goal is to understand where that value actually lies.
And the reason we can even tackle this complexity, I think, is because, well, you already do this every single day. Let's step away from the trading screens completely for a moment, just to show that you've already got this core skill of judging value.
Yeah, think about just everyday decisions. We're constantly weighing up the benefit, the utility against the cost.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, like going to the supermarket, you're in the produce aisle looking for a perfect avocado. You pick it up, you check the color, feel for ripeness. You're assessing its immediate value, right?
Yeah.
How good is this avocado right now?
Exactly. That's the value assessment. But then you look at the little sticker, and maybe the price is double what you normally pay because, I don't know, there was a bad harvest somewhere.
Okay. So your brain does a quick calculation.
Instantly. The value is okay, maybe even good, but the price is too high compared to that value.
Yeah.
So you put it back, you pass on the deal, you just did a fundamental analysis, cost versus utility. The cost outweighed the benefit at that price.
Or think about a bigger purchase, maybe like a couch. You see one, it looks all right, maybe it's cheaply made, but the price is amazing.
Then you see another one. It's way more expensive, but it's solid wood, great fabric, looks like it'll last forever, fits the room perfectly.
So you weigh it up. You decide the long-term value, the durability, the look, how much you'll enjoy it, justifies paying that higher price.
That is fundamental analysis, judging quality, utility, durability against cost over time. And maybe the best example is house hunting. You walk into a place, the agent tells you the price, and it's just astronomical.
And you instantly know, right? Your gut tells you. This price doesn't match the dodgy location or the old kitchen or the fact that it clearly needs a new roof soon.
You trust that instinct, that fundamental assessment. You walk away because the price the market is asking just doesn't line up with the underlying quality or utility of the asset, the house.
So these decisions really prove it. That core skill, that judgment, it's already there. We just need to add a bit of structure, a bit of specific data when we apply it to financial markets.
Exactly. So the market is just taking that same question. Is this price too high, too low, or about right? And applying it on a massive scale. What changes, like you said, are the specific inputs? What factors do we actually look at to figure out the value for different types of assets?
Okay, let's bridge that gap then. If I'm good at judging if a house is overpriced, how does that help me judge, say, a government bond? The mechanics seem totally different.
They are totally different. That's a great point. When you're analyzing something like U.S. Treasury yields, you're essentially trying to value a stream of future guaranteed payments. Those payments are fixed. So your focus shifts completely. You're looking at factors that make those fixed future dollars worth more or less when you get them.
Okay, so things like inflation, that's got to be key.
Right.
And maybe overall economic growth, and what the Federal Reserve is likely to do with interest rates.
Precisely. Think about inflation. If inflation is running high, that fixed dollar payment you get from the bond next year or in 10 years buys less stuff. Its real value, its purchasing power, is lower. So when inflation expectations go up, the fundamental value of that bond with its fixed payout actually drops. And so its price falls, which pushes the yield up. It's a structural relationship.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, what about stocks? Let's say we're looking at an equity index, maybe like China's A50 index you mentioned. What drives the value there? It's not fixed payments.
No, for stocks, the value driver is really about future profits, corporate earnings, and the potential for growth. So for the A50, your fundamental analysis needs to look at things like, how is the overall Chinese economy doing? What's the PBOC, their central bank, doing with monetary policy? Are they stimulating? Are they tightening? And what about domestic demand within China?
So if the PBOC signals it's going to pump more money into the system, that could boost growth prospects.
Right, which improves the fundamental outlook for the companies in the A50. So the value of the index goes up, even if there's some random bit of bad news that makes the price dip for a day or two. You need that country-specific knowledge for each market, absolutely. But the goal is always the same. Figure out the future worth.
Okay, now let's talk commodities. These often seem trickier. They feel more physical, maybe more reactive than bonds or stocks.
They definitely add layers of complexity, yeah. Commodities are tangible things, right? Oil, gas, coffee, wheat. And that means they have unique drivers that can cause some really violent price swings, even if the big macro picture looks stable. We usually track, let's say, 3 main layers of fundamentals here.
Okay, first one seems obvious. Supply and demand. Just basic physical availability.
Key point. You can't just print more corn if there's a drought, unlike, say, a company issuing more stock. So if there's a major crop failure in Brazil, that fundamentally changes the global supply picture for coffee, for example. The physical quantity is lower, so the value and likely the price shoots up.
And the second layer you mentioned is often linked to that, weather. You talked about a cold snap hitting natural gas prices?
Perfect example. Sudden extreme cold. That's a huge immediate demand shock for heating fuel. And the supply is relatively fixed in the short term. So price has to adjust, often dramatically.
And the third layer, geopolitics.
Especially crucial in energy markets. Think about OPEC deciding to cut oil production. That decision isn't directly tied to, say, U.S. inflation or companies' earnings report. It's a structural decision about physical supply made by key producers, and it immediately resets the fundamental value equation for oil.
Okay, so bonds, stocks, commodities, each needs a different lens. Now, what about currencies? Foreign exchange or FX? That seems like it has its own unique challenge.
It absolutely does. The big difference with FX is that you're always trading a pair. You can't just buy euro. You buy euro against the dollar, against the yen, or whatever. So if you buy, say, euro dollar, you're effectively bullish on the euro and simultaneously bearish on the US dollar.
So you have to analyze two things at once.
Exactly. That's the dual challenge. You can't just look at the Eurozone economy in isolation or the U.S. economy in isolation. You need to understand both economies, both central banks, the ECB and the Fed, both policy paths, both inflation outlooks, both growth trends. It's all about relative fundamental strength.
So it's not enough to just say, oh, the U.S. economy looks strong. The real question is,
The question is the U.S. economy looking fundamentally stronger than the Eurozone economy? And, importantly, is that relative strength already fully reflected in the current euro-dollar exchange rate or not?
got it. So even if the Fed is hiking rates, which should boost the dollar, if the European Central Bank is expected to hike even faster or more,
Then the fundamental picture might actually favor the euro strengthening relative to the dollar, even while the dollar might be getting stronger against other currencies. It's that relative comparison that's absolutely critical in FX.
okay, so ultimately we gather all this specific information, inflation for bonds, earnings for stocks, supply for commodities, relative growth for FX, and the goal is to make a judgment call, right? Is this thing undervalued, overvalued, or fairly valued?
That's the aim. And that judgment leads you to form what we call a fundamental bias.
A fundamental bias. Okay, explain that. What does that really mean?
This is maybe the most crucial concept for people learning this stuff. A fundamental bias is not a prediction that the market's going to crash tomorrow or rocket higher next week. It's more like an assessment of the most likely direction of value, the direction the price is likely to drift over a longer period, months, quarters, maybe even years.
Right, separating that long-term flow from all the short-term noise. And this is where that analogy comes in, the one we use all the time. Thinking of your fundamental bias like a stream flowing downhill.
Exactly. Think of the core fundamentals, the economic growth, the interest rate differentials, the supply-demand balance. Think of those as setting the slope of the hill. They define the path of least resistance for the asset's price.
So if the fundamentals are strong and positive, maybe solid earnings growth for a stock or favorable interest rates for a currency, the stream is flowing, let's say, downhill towards higher prices. Or maybe uphills is a better way to think of rising prices. Let's stick with downhill towards value realization. If value is higher, price flows towards it.
Let's refine that slightly. If fundamentals suggest the value is significantly higher than the current price, the stream flows downhill from the current price level towards that higher value equilibrium. The path of least resistance is upwards for the price.
Okay, got it. And if the fundamentals are negative, maybe there's a recession looming or a country has way too much debt, then the value is lower and the stream flows downhill from the current price towards those lower levels. The path of least resistance for price is downwards.
Precisely. The fundamental bias just tells you which way the hill is sloping.
Yeah.
Now, what about all the day-to-day stuff? The news headlines, the sudden tweets, the shifts in market sentiment.
Those are like the rocks in the stream, or maybe fallen branches.
Exactly. They're obstacles. They cause ripples. They might divert the water flow temporarily. The price might bounce off a rock, some unexpected news, and move against the main trend for a day or a week.
Unless that rock is huge, unless it actually changes the slope of the whole hill.
Right. Unless the event fundamentally alters the underlying value proposition, the core earnings outlook, the inflation trajectory, the supply situation, then eventually the water finds its way back. The price usually resumes its travel along that path of least resistance defined by the fundamentals.
So the real power here is using fundamentals to tell the difference between just a temporary ripple, a bit of noise,
And a genuine shift in the underlying landscape, a change in the slope of the hill. That's the framework it gives you. When a price moves against your analysis, you ask, did something fundamental actually change? Did the slope shift? Or was that just a rock, just some short-term market noise?
It gives you conviction then. You don't need perfect timing. You just need to have a good sense of that underlying direction, that path of least resistance set by value. And like we said, you already know how to make these value judgments instinctively. Now it's just about applying structure, using the right data, which is what we'll keep digging into throughout this series.
Yeah, absolutely. We hope this deep dive helped, demystify fundamentals a bit, showed you how it connects to things you already do, and gave you a clearer picture of how to start thinking about market analysis from a value perspective.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us again for our next deep dive as we continue building the necessary building blocks of macro analysis.